Hi again, this is Mike Siver and Ernest Spencer, who I forgot to introduce in the last show.
No problem.
Sorry about that. We're talking about performance change and how when we allow, because we allow it or it wouldn't happen, young people, and we're talking primarily about families and young people, or the community and young people, how in the community is not as strong as they used to be. Because I know when I was younger, and probably when you were younger too, you run down up and down the street, you start running in people's yards, they get mad and tell you to get out.
Right.
And if you don't do it, then they go and tell your mom and dad. Well, that don't happen anymore,
No.
or very rarely.
Very, very rarely.
Yeah. So we're talking about performance change and what does it take to change a behavior?
I had a young man call me. It's been about 5 years ago now, 6 years. And he said, I just got out of prison. I did 13 years. He said, if I hadn't told that lie to you when I was a little kid, I probably would have never ended up in prison. Because I used to take kids to games and stuff.
Right.
And he cursed one time in my house, and I went to his house and I told his mother. And she turned and asked him, did he do it? And I was on crutches. I had a non-walking cast on. And I stopped right there. I said, I don't need to do no more. I said, I have nothing better to do than to hop down here and tell this lie on your son. So many years later, he said, you took kids to games and did all that stuff. If I hadn't have told that lie to you, you wouldn't have stopped dealing with me. And I would have had a whole different way of dealing with things.
Yep.
And that was real important to me. And that was about 5, 6 years ago he told me that.
And that puts you in a dilemma too, as the adult there, because even though most adults care, and most adults don't want to give up on children. So you can say, okay, you lied, don't do it again, we'll keep going. But then you've also taught him how to treat you.
Right.
So he can lie to his mom about you, and you're not doing anything about it. There was no consequences.
Right.
So that puts a lot of pressure on you when it's not your responsibility.
Right.
It's the parent's responsibility. Now, could they have done something and made arrangements with you behind the scenes? If he does this or does this, will you take him back again? You probably would have.
I would have.
But this is the part we keep talking about on here. Parenting, as we know, and everybody says it, I'm not saying anything that nobody doesn't know about, is hard. To be an effective, positive role model in your children's life is a full-time, hard-time job.
Yes. I have a young man I'm working with now. He got a wife. They just had a baby. It's first time for him. She has a child that's challenged. And now that challenged child is back in the house. But, I talked to him a lot, and he's like, man, I have to get up in the middle of the night. She's not the same. And all of that comes from being, and I talk a lot with him, probably what'll be in my bio, me and helping kids when we do the program. Excuse me, is that it's on the job training. And you can get help from other people like we're trying to do.
Right. Yep.
But, it takes a willingness to take what someone has to give you.
Yep.
And it takes a willingness to learn it even after they give it to you.
And you have to teach them the value of information at the same time. I mean, there's no easy way out of it.
Right.
Children, as we talk about in the book, and we're sort of covering all the chapters in the book now, are like sponges, as we know. They absorb everything in the atmosphere. They have no other knowledge of anything else. It's like they don't know the pot is hot until they touch it.
Right.
And I don't know many people that have accepted that it's hot and never touched it to find out what hot even means.
Right.
I know I did. I got a burnt finger to prove it to this day. But I didn't know what hot was.
Right.
I touched the pot. Now I know what hot is. I won't do that again.
Right.
But that's the performance change that we talk about, the pain and pleasure and the consequences. And I'm not telling all parents to put a hot pot on the stove
Right.
and tell their kids, don't touch that, it's hot, because you know they're going to do it.
They're going to touch it.
So, and hopefully they only burn their finger and not their nose or their tongue or something else. So we have to understand that we as adults and parents have expectations of our children as well.
Mhm.
And just because they're 5 or 6 years old doesn't mean they know what all 5 and 6-year-olds should know, because they only know what you teach them.
Right.
So when they go to school for the first time in kindergarten, and they come home with speaking words that you've never heard before,
Mhm.
you want to be careful how you approach that. And we talked about this on another show a while back, was setting house rules.
Mhm.
House rules are not mom's rules or dad's rules, because that way mom can blame dad and dad can blame mom,
right.
and one's the bad guy all the time.
I call that tag team parenting.
Yep. And that's okay if they're tag team on the same page.
Right.
So if you have house rules, then mom and dad have agreed, these are the rules of this house.
Mhm.
And what these rules mean is what they say, and we enforce that, and we keep them going. And when you stop enforcing the house rules, that's when the kids get confused. Because, well, how come that used to be a rule, but now it's not? What changed? What happened? And kids really need to have some secure environment to grow up in, some stability, dependability. They can count on mom and dad being there. Now, I know that's different.
I understand what you're saying. It's not A today and B tomorrow.
No.
If it was A yesterday, it's A today and it's A tomorrow.
And it will stay that way.
Right. And I do understand that. Well, I got so many grandchildren, I don't have a choice. I have to lay down rules that abide to all of them. I not to take up the whole show, I have a grandson who he's been over my house the last couple of weekends, and I knew why he was there, but I wanted somebody to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
His mother finally said, I can't do anything with him. Can you help him? I said, yeah, he's been in my house anyway. So went to the school, got my name added to the list.
All right.
Told him he's gonna stay at my house for the next 3 weeks to a month. I immediately told him you will not miss any more days at school. 13 days at school, he got kicked out 3 times. How did he get kicked out? I said, okay, I know you can do better than that, and you're going to do better than that. And I set down these guidelines. In the last 3 days, he's been to school, he's been to all of his classes, but there's also several people on security. One that used to work with me, one that I knew as an ex-police officer. And I said, these people are my friends, and they've dealt with my other grandchildren, because you have a cousin that's up here, and they're going to deal with you and let me know when you do something wrong. I could feel already that it's changing, because his father's not around. My son has been gone out of his life for years, and his mother doesn't know how to deal with him. He's 14, almost 15.
Wow.
He needs a man in his life. You know, women can only take a male child so far.
Yeah.
And that's just my belief. I was raised by a single woman, but she could only take me so far.
I was raised by a single woman
Yeah,
too,
I
so,
know.
yeah. And you're right, and the point is, like, that goes back to the very thing we talked about.
Mhm.
Children need direction.
Mhm.
And if they're free to make their own decisions all the time, we end up with what we see on TV today.
Mhm.
Now, how long, that's been going on for years and years and years, and these are products of products of products.
Right.
So it's not gonna happen overnight.
You're exactly right. I say the same thing as you say, products of products. I call it babies being raised by babies.
Yep.
It was raised by babies.
Yep.
And it's the same theory. Our grandmothers were 60, 70 years old, at least 50 something. Now grandmothers are 30 years old.
Yeah.
And the child she's a grandmother, but she ain't taught her child nothing, because she had a child when she was a child. And it's in my family. It's not something I'm talking about. I seen it. I got a granddaughter had a baby at 13. My daughter had a baby at 14. Her mother had a baby at 14. Her grandmother had a baby at 15, and her great grandmother had a baby at 14.
Wow.
So it's generational. And I work with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old granddaughter, and great granddaughter, so that doesn't happen.
Well, it's like, and there's a lot of papers. When I was in college, we got a paper that was called, that we had to study and do a report on, When Children Have Children.
Right.
And that's scary. Because if you, like you said, if you have a 14-year-old has a baby, what does a 14-year-old know about raising a baby? They're still a
The
baby themselves.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. They're still a baby.
So they have no idea, but yet it happens all the time. What the answer is, I don't know what the answer is. It's parenting, I think.
It is. It is.
Stronger and stronger parenting. But we get all the way through these children growing up, and we talked about rules for the house rules. They also have to be age appropriate. Now, you can't have a set of house rules for a 3-year-old and expect a 10-year-old
Right, you're right.
to live by those rules.
Right,
First of all, it doesn't show any respect to the 10-year-old,
correct.
but it also gives them more freedoms. So the 3-year-old says, wow, when I get 10-year-old, I'll be able to do that. Wow, I can do that when I get 6 years old. Now they have a goal to achieve, a goal to look for, and when they get there, they can expect it, and they should get it. Now, just because they get 6 years old, you can't say, well, you know, you don't deserve it yet. No, that's not how it works. The house rule says 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 2 to 4. When they get 6 years old, that's the new rules.
I have a niece, and I won't spit out her name, that smokes a lot of marijuana.
Ooh.
And my great niece, her daughter, came to me at 6 years old and said, when I get 16, I can smoke weed like my
Yep.
mama. Because she sees it being done so
Yep.
much, she thinks it's appropriate. Because no one has said you don't do this. At least no one that counts to her until I told her.
Well, the problem you have with that, in that situation that exists now, the 16-year-old is doing it with no consequences.
Right.
So you can't tell the youngest one, well, when you get 16, you're going to go to jail like your sister,
Right.
or like your cousin or whatever, because she didn't go.
No, she didn't.
So we've created a real dilemma.
Yes, we have.
We have no examples to say this can happen or that can happen because it doesn't happen.
It doesn't anymore. It doesn't.
So, you know, we're at a really tough situation, which is another reason why we created No Fences, to start bringing this information to the parents. And it'll be a gradual change. We pray it's going to be a gradual change. And we need to introduce this kind of philosophy to young parents, because they're the ones that we're going to look at. The 30 years old, 40-year-olds, I'd love to have them come and listen and talk in class, but that doesn't happen.
It don't. It doesn't.
And that's a shame, because they figure, okay, I'm already done now, I've had all my kids, I'm not having any more, what do I need this for?
Right.
Well, you're still a role model
To your children and grandchildren.
to your children and your grandchildren, and to other young people. You know, if you're 35 years old, and you're in a professional trade, even a tradesman, and you're good at it, the young tradesmen that come along watch you. And if you're doing all the crazy stuff, the shortcuts, the stuff that can hurt people or damage people, and get away with it, then they're going to too.
Right.
So it really goes for everybody to start to understand that we have to set a standard where the word integrity comes back into our vocabulary. And that's a very tough word for
It
everybody
is.
to swallow. And you can't have you can't be part-time integrity. It's full-time or no
No
time.
time. You're correct.
And kids see that. And you and I both are old enough now, trying to give back, trying to address the children that are coming along that we work with, and you work with them and I work with them. I'm a chaplain in the jail. I see 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds in there all the time. And some of them don't have a clue.
Right.
They really don't understand.
And I've done some studying over the years, and I'm sure you have too. 90%, 85 to 90% of those young men and young women that are in jail and going through changes is because they grew up in a home where there was no father or a delinquent parent
Yep.
or a using parent.
Yep. And they don't like to hear that, the parents.
Right.
But a lot of young people, we only got about 30 seconds
Go
left,
ahead.
but the single moms are the toughest ones.
Right.
They're the ones that get the most, I guess, the bad name. But what is a single mom trying to raise family, how do they deal with children like that? It's hard for them. They have a really hard road. Well, that's it for this show. I hope we've given some, please contact the email address on there if you want to come on the show. We look forward to having everybody. Take care.